A lot of advocates don't even talk about the personal side.
Yeah.
It's an emotionally charged time.
Yeah.
If you think about it, they've just sold their biggest asset, often either bigger or less than their house.
If you were competing against us and we're both going for the same acquisition, why Evergreen versus someone like us, which is a different, and I'm happy to kind of talk through, I guess, how we would position
This is where
something
we
like
just
that.
talk crap about each other, just at each other. Okay, go.
It's Friday afternoon.
I'm an M&A advisor. I don't like M&A. I don't like it. I don't think it's
the worst. It's the most expensive type of growth for sure.
I don't think it's great. I think there's one reason to do M&A, and that's
Now we have
right, get
Ryan
the stuff out.
Spillane from 360 Consulting, guest number 2, day 1. And Ross, there you go, first focus, special guest.
Co-host / special guest, is that,
Either,
I
both.
guess?
2 hats.
So I feel really special being here.
Yeah. So I guess it makes a lot of sense for us to have, the two of you having the same conversation, a lot of shared experience in the MSP, M&A world, both having, bought, at least been involved in the purchase of a number of companies. Maybe what I should do is give you a chance to talk about 360 Consulting and, what you actually do.
Okay, so 3 major pillars of what 360 do. So a lot around the merger and acquisition side for MSPs and TSPs. Valuation, so we do a lot of appraisals, a couple of appraisals for MSPs each month generally. And a lot of consulting in like preparing a company for sale, or if they're looking to buy or acquire, getting them ready, because you don't just walk out there and buy an MSP or a TSP tomorrow morning. It's generally, you got to be prepared for it. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is a lot of consulting. So let's be honest, about 80% of what you do in any normal MSP to get them ready for sale, you do in any other MSP or TSP, and they start making more money, they less stress, and they enjoy their business. And then the last pillars are a bunch of strategic consulting, long-range engagements, help facilitate their offsite strategy days, those types of things. And that's actually on the MSP side, and even actually on the vendor side. I've actually worked with a few vendors as well.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people engaging a wide variety of experts. I mean, and sometimes it's someone with deep industry expertise. Sometimes it's more of a generic business broker or business advisor. They might have a coach. Generally, if you're a business leader, you're going to have a network of people you're going to lean on, accountants, lawyers, all that kind of stuff you're going to need. But I think, I know, worked with Ryan for a while. It's very valuable to have that deep industry expertise. I think we're having gone through the process, and because I'm sure you're helping them not just with the business, but their own journey a little bit as well.
Right. There's a lot on the personal side that no one ever talks about, and most brokers, or I kind of like to say advocates rather than brokers. A lot of advocates don't even talk about the personal side. Right. It's like, what are they doing outside of work? Everyone wants to increase their valuation, which we'll talk about throughout the conversation, but who's talking about what they're doing after? What happens after they sell? What are they going to do? Like, they're so used to, like, really, their business is one of their children normally. Yeah. And it's normally the one that gets the most attention.
Something you guys have both dealt with a bit, and I think it's a universally experienced part of being acquired, is an owner staying within the business and doing the earn out and having to make that adjustment to not being the big cheese, like to having to be a part of a bigger team and to, give up some control. I guess because it is something that doesn't just relate to this industry, have you guys got any insights as to what it takes to make that work well, the kind of personalities that you need to do, the things that maybe the coaching that would be involved to help someone navigate that? I mean, in our business, right, we've got Jason Lamarcky, a great example of someone who did that well, I think, owner that sold his business to First Focus and is just doing a great job inside the business. But I'm sure there's a lot of stories where it's not the case. So
they've got to have a passion outside of the business as well. Right. We started going there before. It's great you brought it back around. Is that, they've got to have a passion. They've got to have an interest, a hobby, or whatever outside of the business. And it's one of the things I actually sit down with clients when we start to prepare their business and whatnot, is what are you doing outside of the business? And it's like, they just want to double down and do the most to increase the value of their business. It's like, that's great, but you need to actually start having a hobby. That thing you did 20 years ago, that thing you did 5 years ago and you've got too busy to go and do, no, you need to start that up again. You need to find another purpose, because when you are no longer the owner, you can't just throw all your discretionary effort at it 100% of the time, because then you feel like, oh, what am I getting for this? So they need to actually have other purposes. And it's counterproductive, but it's really important for the after sale component. Like the first week that you've sold, it's like, this is great. I don't have to deal with this stuff now. I can hand it over to someone else. The problem is the second week and the third and the fourth week, you then realize, hang on, I don't have to wait for that other person to make a decision. I can't just make the decision now. And as I say to a lot of people, and I've other companies we acquired over time, I used to actually have them go and speak to Wayne and other people to what they actually felt when they went through it. Because I often say it's about the 6-month mark is where you're at the lowest. Especially through ignoring an earn-out, ignoring any of those, but about 6 months in is your lowest point. Because at that point in time, you've gone through, it's like, I'm not the decision maker now. I'm not the king cheese. I'm not the person that's at the top of this thing anymore. And it's like, it's really that it actually plays on them. It's like, what have I done? I'm happy that I've got a bunch of money and this, that, and the other, but I'm not in control anymore. And then from about that 6th to 7th month mark, I said it's the lowest point, they start building back out. So by that 12-month mark, they're actually enjoying life again. They're happy. It's like, okay, this is actually a good decision. They get their earn out. It's like, okay, this is really good. And then it's a case of, okay, am I enjoying this? And do I actually want to stay, or do I finish and exit? Depends on are they a certain age and they want to retire? Is it they actually want to, have other things in life? They've got grandkids and want to go and do those types of things, or they still love the industry and love clients and all the technology and spend time in there. But yeah, for 6 months is that lowest mark. And even as part of the advocacy that I do is I actually will speak to the people that I've helped sell their business all the way through to about 8 or 9 months, because I know they're going to be low. And just this random call from me at the time can actually make a big difference for them.
So one of the hardest bits of an earnout is you are putting a portion of really what's their biggest thing they'll ever probably sell, maybe other than the house, right? You're putting a portion of that at risk, but saying you don't have complete control over whether you're going to get that money, right? And that's what's going on in their mind, right? It's like, well, but you're holding 30% of this back, and now I'm not completely in control of whether I'm going to get that 30% because, especially for us, we're going to do a fairly full integration fairly quickly. And so it comes back to designing the earnout well to be win-win as much as clear as simple as possible, but it has to be win-win, because if there's ever this idea of being screwed out of the earnout, that you're here to try and give me less. Like, no, I actually want you to exceed it and get an upside and a bonus, because part of the risk of having a risk of earnout is that there should be a reward as well. And so I want you to have a reward, and if you have a reward, we win, right? Win. And so the modeling of it can be really, really important, but very early on, there does have to be that understanding of you aren't going to have full control here. And that's why the contract, often has a lot of stuff around, a buyer's not allowed to do anything that's,
contrary to the business, et
to
cetera.
the interest, and with the intent of ensuring, we're not going to get an earnout. So contractually you can handle it, but it's actually about going in with a win-win mentality and mindset. And, we've tended to pay upsides most of the time because we can go, hey, let's go out and do this together. And
it's an emotionally charged time.
Yeah.
If you think about it, they've just sold their biggest asset, often either bigger or less than their house, depending on the size of the business. But often, decent sized businesses are multiple houses that they've just sold in essence.
Yeah.
And they're not in control. And it's like, I love the way actually you do it, Ross, in that you actually want that upside for them, because you can say that, but it's the emotion side. So you can put it in contract, you put it in paper, but it's not until someone's been in it. And the best thing you actually do, and I've done this for years as well, is actually let them speak to other people that have gone through it with you.
Yeah.
Because at least then, if you've got a pattern of people saying, no, they actually do the right thing, they try to help us, they actually wanted us to get more money, because it actually does, it improves for everyone.
All right, Sydney Hockett, VP of M&A at Evergreen. Is that the right title?
That is correct.
Both of you know much more about the current state of M&A, both in this market and internationally. I should probably sit out and let the adults speak, but again, that's self-deprecating, so I shouldn't say that. How about maybe we start off with maybe a bit of an overview, as you see it with your Evergreen hat on, of the current state of M&A in the Australian market. I've heard a couple of things today, a little bit that maybe it's slowing down a touch, but there's a greater awareness of money coming into the market, which leads to a lot more interest generally. They want to understand what they could potentially be working towards.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just getting started. We've only been here since the 1st of January this year, but, we've done 6 deals and 3 more on the way. So I think the pace is starting to pick up. I think activity is starting to pick up. I would not be surprised if more buyers enter the space. I mean, we have, others have done some other bigger acquisitions in the space. So I don't really see it slowing down. I think there's ebbs and flows throughout the year, depending on fiscal years and business performance. But I think, like, even if you look at this conference, it's the first time M&A has really been talked about consistently through this conference as it's been over the years. And so I think it's just getting started and it's going to get busier.
How many of these have you been to? Like the Sydney one, were you here 2 years ago?
This is my first.
Same as me. So traditionally, has there just
one.
not been this much chat about M&A at the Sydney event?
There's been some, but it's been probably, not theoretical is the wrong word, but it's certainly been, this is what we're seeing in the US. But the activity hasn't really been there to support it. I'd say, I mean, we've been on that journey for 4 years ourselves, right? And probably even over that time, we've seen a very different change in the level of knowledge, the conversations. But yeah, the conversation has been there, but it's always been in the distance, like working towards an exit. But now you can actually exit, and you do have people coming in with money to be able to facilitate that, right?
Yeah.
So you work all over the world. You're always going everywhere, traveling a lot. Why is Australia, and I guess also New Zealand, the ANZ region, why is it an attractive proposition for the likes of Evergreen?
I mean, to my first comment, the way we got in here is through the ConnectWise community. I think it's very intermingled with the US in a good way. There's a lot of connectivity and knowledge sharing. And so for us, as we thought about expanding to new markets, it's pretty hard to do that cold turkey. And so having the connections and knowing that there's continuity across tech stack and initiatives and things like that is exciting. But I think there's just this really real opportunity to accelerate the learnings that inevitably happen across different geos, but make that happen faster when you've got businesses under the same ownership in different regions. I think we've bought a couple of businesses here that are thinking in really forward ways about public cloud offerings and things like that we can take back to the US. I think we've done a ton with cybersecurity uptake, programs with that in the US that we could accelerate here with businesses we partner with. I think the reality is just the economy of Australia and New Zealand is fascinating. It's very driven by small businesses, and that is the perfect captive customer base for MSPs. And so, it's a great service offering for the population of customers in this region. I think an easy way to grow.
Right.
So most people, when they hear private equity, is not, the first thing that comes to mind is not necessarily something positive. I know in all our dealings and other people I've spoken to of Evergreen, that's you guys are probably at the opposite end of that spectrum. What is it that you think's given private equity that image? And how are you guys doing
How
different?
are you not evil, is what he's asking. Or are you, in fact, evil? So.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can make that determination. I'll leave that to you all. But I mean, I actually think it's pretty fair, right? Like, even as I thought about going into a career in private equity, there were a lot of places I didn't want to work for a lot of the same reasons that, people here are stereotypes. They don't care about the people. They're just in it for the money. They're ruthlessly cutting employees. It's all about the bottom line. And at the end of the day, like, the basis of private equity, that is true, right? The idea is you buy a business, you make it more valuable, you sell it off again for a higher price, and that's a huge return for the owner. Now, that's super reductive. I think for us, we've set out to do it in a much more people-first way. That's part of our mission, and I think that comes about in kind of a two-prong fashion. One, we don't sell our businesses, so we're not just focusing on that next turn. Secondly, we're not integrating and rolling up our businesses. So the way that we are thinking about growth is on a more sustained timeline. We want each individual business to grow for a long period of time. That requires keeping the people, keeping the brand, keeping the culture. And so it's quite a bit less disruptive than I think your more traditional quick succession PE roll-ups. And I think that works because we're never selling. So the two in combo is important, because when you are looking to sell, you do have to, grow faster.
So how do you balance that with, obviously it's more important to have a sustainable profit stream in that model. So how do you balance that with allowing, I guess, investment in those businesses?
Yeah, I think it's it is a balance. And at the end of the day, we leave a lot of that decision making to our operators on the ground. At Evergreen, we think about M&A day in and day out. We definitely don't know how to run an MSP, and we don't want to. So we've got amazing leaders, both at our kind of umbrella team that sits over all of our MSPs, as well as on the ground at each business. And, we'd rather there be more investment that's going to fuel future growth than, just maximizing for short-term profit. And so I think that's stuff we plan for and think about as we go through budgeting and, what the collective performance of our portfolio looks like.
Yeah. Look, I know the both of us talk to a lot of businesses that are looking to sell. So I've got my thoughts on this, but what should they be concentrating on that they're not today?
Organic growth, sales.
On it.
Non-founder-led sales.
Right, yeah.
Which is important. And I think it's a really hard thing to do. Like, don't get me wrong, I say that, and it's not like it's easier said than done. But as you think about increasing value and what makes businesses great, it's just so important to have that growth engine. I could go through a slew of other things, but off the cuff, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
But why do you think this sector doesn't do it very well?
I think most of these businesses are founded by someone with a technical background, which makes a lot of sense, right? Like ultimately that is the service offering.
Yeah.
But there's a reason people aren't technical geniuses and great salespeople. That usually is a different person, right? It's really hard to do both. And so I think it's a different mindset.
Yeah.
And you need a different person doing each one. It matters what you're incentivized to do. And so I think these businesses have started because someone was really good at what they're offering, and it turned into a business. It didn't start out because they were building a business that was geared towards growth.
Yeah.
How crowded's the PE market here? Like, is it? You guys said you're pretty new to the market. Is there a whole bunch of other people that are new to the market as well? I think there's at least one other person we're talking to later on. I think that's relatively new.
You probably know better than I do. I think we haven't found, the deals that we've worked on to be particularly competitive. Like, I think when we think in the US, there's usually at least, 2 to 3 parties at the table for every deal, be it, through a broker or not. So I think it's more, what we're seeing more of is, like you guys, bigger MSPs that are doing acquisitions on their own versus PE firms specifically.
Yeah.
Obviously we've been quite acquisitive, I think would be the term, and will continue to be so. But I saw in your presentation your 5 mil plus is kind of your starting point, right? So it's kind of a different demo that we're after potentially.
Yeah, and look, and that's why I think there is room for multiple people in the market, and being really clear on the what and the why we're doing. Everyone has to have their space and where they want to play. Coming back to that original PE thing is like, if you're here just to make money, that's one message, which appeals to some people. I think the interesting message here is this idea of the permanent home. And I know a lot of MSP owners I talk to, they have that emotional connection to the brand, and that does seem to resonate. I mean,
Yeah, I think it resonates with me, right? I spend all of my time talking to MSP owners, and I feel really good about what we do with businesses and what I'm sitting there selling to them. Like, I don't think that I could do this job. We were just turning around and, taking the business for parts. That's a personal thing. But we really do care about it. I think the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, I would talk to all of our sellers, and I think the consistent feedback we get is that we do what we say we would. And that's really important, something we care a lot about.
Rough.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
Do it.
But I'm gonna answer this question as well. So, we're in the same peer group in the States, so we're sharing stuff as well. But if you were competing against us and we're both going for the same acquisition, what would you say? Why Evergreen versus someone like us, which is a different, and I'm happy to kind of talk through, I guess, how we would position something like that.
We just talk crap about each other, just at each
Perfect.
other. Okay, go.
It's Friday afternoon.
It's because we're both coming there with a story, right? So what's the...
Yeah, I think for us, it's that if they sell to us, they keep their brand.
Yeah.
Every employee stays. We have a lot of flexibility around what the founder wants to do. So the business as they know it today stays intact. I understand correctly, if they sell to you, there's a tech stack migration, unclear, I don't know how you handle the team, but you're going to become first focus. And there's benefits to that too, but it's a very different model. So, we would lean into the fact that we're retaining the legacy, the brand they've built over all these years and, allowing it to run independently and, allowing the lives of their staff and customers to be very unchanged.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, we do absolutely integrate and we sell that story, right? And as I sell, we're looking for someone aligned to that story, right? It's not like you're trying to sell it and convince. It's like you're trying to find people that buy into that.
There's a good fit, right? There's some people where we aren't the right model for them. They want to take more of a first focus approach, and that's great. I think that's why I kind of said yesterday, like, people really need to do their research about what's out there and develop a sense of what they want their future to look like. Because our job is to sell, and they have to be able to decide what makes sense for them.
Ultimately, you're talking about ICP, really. You've got a target profile. In this case, not customer, but target profile, and you align your messaging to that target. Like, well, you're obviously a good fit for a certain segment. What else do we need to know? I guess what's the one thing you're hoping to actually get out of this conference? Is it just literally leads? Are you hoping to get sort of? Is it basically that? This is essentially a sales exercise, right?
It is a sales exercise. Would love to get leads out of it. This is not like we're selling a software product and I go check my leads list and hopefully someone converts, right? Like, it takes a lot of time. The ROI on these isn't immediate. And like, part of this is just showing up. We keep saying we want to build this portfolio in this region and we're serious about it. It's about time that like we were on the ground here. So, we spent time this week with businesses we already own, ones we're working on, ones we'd like to own. It's a mix, learning about the industry, learning about the region. So it's a little bit bigger than that.
I guess it's the cross-pollination too, right? Like, I know that one of the businesses you've acquired, they're here with you. It's sort of that the social proof, right? It went well. It's a good experience. It's sort of leaning that legitimacy to the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
100%.
Focus investment banking. Sort of the elevator pitch. What's the key focus and why you?
Yeah, so I lead our MSP team for Focus Investment Bank. This is a middle market investment bank. And the team, starting with that experience with Kevin Blake, the business is TechMD. Starting with that experience, we've been the catalyst now for MSP transactions and advised on MSP transactions with 76 parties over the past 5 years, including 12 platform investments. And the platform investment is a private equity group's first kind of major investment in a platform that they then go on to help it grow organically and also do M&A.
Okay.
I mean, we're in peer group with TechMD in the US, and every business in that peer group is private equity owned, other than us. So why is that seem to be the path in the US? Because it hasn't been the path here up until now. Why private equity?
Yeah. It's interesting. Private equity, if you look at both Kevin's business, he was 2.5 million of EBITDA when we started. This was, kind of doing that transaction 3.5 years ago. And it's now grown to 12 million plus of EBITDA. That would not have been possible, just the expertise that the private equity group brings to help do M&A. And to, as a source of capital, both equity capital and also debt, or what's called private credit. Both of those, so access to capital, access to, kind of exceptional talent as it comes to doing due diligence on M&A transactions. And then another MSP platform that were the catalyst for the private equity investment, Rashad with Integris, and also Dave Schaefer, who is a peer group facilitator. That one has gone in that same period of time from 2.5 of EBITDA to 35 million of EBITDA. And just that growth is not possible without PE.
But still, I mean, that's you've still owning 100% of 2.5 and now 10% of 25. It's still 2.5, right? So, I mean, what other than just being bigger, what's the real reason?
It is, the operational maturity of the business, kind of the opportunity for employees. So in a business that does not have private equity and may be capital constrained, employees in that MSP, their kind of career path may be very different than that of a Integris, which is just kind of growing by leaps and bounds. So it provides more opportunity. I would say not only for the employees, I think also for the customers. If you're an MSP that is has access to more resources, as a percent of for AI as an example, and automation as a percent of revenue, a small percent can be invested in that, have massive returns, whereas another MSP that kind of doesn't have that same access to capital, may have more difficulty. I'm an M&A advisor. I don't like M&A. I don't like it. I don't think it's
the worst. It's the most expensive type of growth for sure.
I don't think it's great. I think there's one reason to do M&A, and that's to grow your organic growth engine. So you can kind of get new customers, get new logos. I really discourage people from doing M&A.
In the absence of organic growth.
If there's not buying a great business development kind of organic growth engine. And along those lines, so to the question about focus, we're in 11 different verticals. This is really my advice to MSP founders, CEOs that are vertical agnostic. I think vertical agnostic, I would consider my firm vertical agnostic, but the key within vertical agnostic is to pick something and specialize in it. I call it riches and niches. Find a niche, look at your customer base and say, what are we really good at? Or we may not yet be good at it, but what do we do a lot of? And leverage that to go get more of that type of customer. And I think it helps win from an organic growth perspective. When I go to compete to get hired on an MSP, sell side, kind of whatever assignment, I can show, hey, we've done transactions with 76 people, and you can go talk to all of them. And, I think we have pretty awesome references, and it helps us get hired. Anybody else that's competing doesn't win. And I have that same advice to MSPs. I want to see them grow as quickly as they can from an organic growth perspective, kind of new logo. And I do believe the way to do that is to be, kind of master of nothing, kind of jack of all trades, but really focus on one vertical, one kind of customer type. And your margins can go up there too, because you're really offering specialized services. I think that's the key.
All right, good stuff. All right, thanks, Fuzzy. If people want to get hold of you, I would say LinkedIn is their best bet. Ryan Spillane.
Look, Fuzzy Oz on LinkedIn. Ryan Spillane. Look, I'm sure if you throw me into some sort of browser, I might come up somewhere.
All right, boom. Thanks, Abe. That's awesome. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
Cheers. Hope you've enjoyed your trip out.
Yeah, it's been great. Wow, that's awesome. You're in their peer group. That's just phenomenal. What you're supposed to.
Some